Welcome everybody to this DevSkiller Talent in Tech discussion. My name is Justin Lestel and I'm the Marketing Manager at DevSkiller. DevSkiller is the leading technical screening platform that services customers in over 90 countries worldwide. I'm very excited to welcome you guys to this discussion we've got planned today called How to Source and Recruit Data Professionals Effectively. Now we've got a very exciting discussion planned, and before we jump into that, I've got three very quick, boring housekeeping things to cover. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded, so if you can't make it to the end of the discussion or if you'd like to share it with one of your colleagues afterwards, we'll send you that recording link by the end of this week. Second of all, there will be time for a Q&A session at the end, so if you've got any questions at any time throughout the discussion, just fire them in the Q&A box or in the chat box, wherever you like, and we'll get to them at the end. And last but not least, we'll be sending you guys a post-webinar feedback form. So we'd really appreciate if you guys took the time to fill that in. And yeah, there's some information there about how we did today. Also, like, you can suggest future webinar topics you'd like to see us cover. So we'd love to hear your feedback. Okay, so now that that boring stuff is out of the way, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Ludmilla. So thank you very much for joining us. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting. I'm a tech recruiter at Ivan, and I have been working pretty much in the tech recruitment area for around 6 years. In my background, a bit of experience in the consulting, half a year, and mostly the in-house tech recruitment. Have been working for Zalando, now moved more into the startup scale-up.
Awesome. Scale up, I think we'll probably get to later in the discussion, I think. Thank you very much. And Magda, for those of you who joined us 2 weeks ago, Magda was on our last panel called Secrets of Data-Driven Organizations. So for those of our audience who weren't there, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Magdalena Jończak. I'm the VP Strategy and Transformation at UPC, Liberty Global Telecommunication Company. We are providing both the broadband connectivities as well as various entertainment services to the millions of homes. And part of my transformation role actually is to elevate our data-driven capability, ultimately enabling customer journeys digitalization in order to deliver transparent, trustful, but also joyful customer experiences. And obviously, data is an absolutely critical component of our company transformation. And, I've been recruiting different data-related and analytical roles as a hiring manager under different capacities throughout roughly 20 years of my professional life. But of course, recently, all these trends, all this proliferation of the new data roles are actually quite new and exciting at the same time. So happy to share my kind of view on it.
We're looking forward to it. Yeah, hopefully we can dig a bit deeper into these data roles throughout today's discussion for sure. Okay, and well, thanks for that, Magda. And last but not least, Tomek, thank you for joining us. You're somewhat of a regular on our Talent in Tech discussion. So can you give us a bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks, Justin. So I'm Tomek. I'm a CTO at DevSkiller. So essentially, I'm doing everything related to technology, from programming, designing, but also most importantly, and honestly, that's probably one of the most important roles, recruiting. So figuring out who to hire, how to hire, and like dogfooding our platform as well. So I've been doing recruiting for quite some time in different companies in different positions, because essentially that's like part of the developer portfolio, so to speak, once you reach a certain level like of seniority. So maybe that's how I would define a senior level, that you are doing recruitment and you are shaping the future teams. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we've got collectively a wealth of experience on today's panel, and we've got a really exciting discussion planned. But what I would like to do first is launch a poll. We've got a few polls lined up today. Basically, we want to hear back from you guys, hear what you have to say, and hopefully we can kind of structure our conversation accordingly. So this first poll, which I'll just launch now, is about data roles, and I'll let our panelists vote as well. So the question is, what are the most popular roles you're recruiting for in 2022? And we got the options of data scientist, data engineer, data analyst, data ops specialist, chief data officer, BI specialist, or other. And yes, this is a multi-choice poll as well. So you can submit multiple answers, because obviously may not be hiring for one particular role. But I can still see some answers coming through. And I think, one more, two more, three more. Okay, I might stop it. Okay, let's share the results. So we've got data engineer coming first. However, we've got votes actually for every position here, including other. And if I meant to say, if there was something that's not there that you think is kind of a role that we should discuss, you can drop that in the chat box as well, and we'll talk about that. But I'll stop sharing that one now. And yeah, I'll go to you, Ludmilla. Now that we've seen the poll, do you share a similar experience with your sort of hiring needs this year? Like, what roles are you hiring for over at Avon?
Well, I would say exactly like multi-choice, all of them. Yes, everywhere, scaling up. The data is pretty much something as an important core. So across the business, across the tech, data engineers, data analysts, business analysts, definitely something as on top priority. Yeah, for sure. I think yeah, the polls pretty much speak for itself because it's quite an even spread. Magda, maybe you can add something here. You're more on the hiring manager side, I guess, of the equation in recruitment, but you obviously got hiring needs at Liberty Global. So what roles are you looking for this year? If
every single
one answer, yeah.
We can have, and we want probably every single role that was mentioned, plus a couple of others. Data engineers and data science roles are standing strong in terms of our talent development needs. I mean, that's quite a large, group of roles that we are kind of actively sourcing. At the same time, the evergreens. BI, engineer and specialists or data analysts, actually, again, evergreens. I mean, it's always a place in the organization, especially such large organization as ours, to actually always having some talents gap in that respect, especially. And at the same time, we're also using different roles that were not mentioned in the poll. Like data architects, data ML or even deep learning engineers, ML or deep learning scientists, ML ops, data ops that was already mentioned, and actually one that might be a bit still exotic to some of the companies, but actually for us, especially in the area where we try to bridge the gap between insight creation and deployment and insight adoption widely within the organization, because we're not thinking about the data-driven as like the sole responsibilities of the data teams or, a more like only digitalization effort, but it goes and it spreads throughout the organization. Then we are very much in the need, which is called an insight translator or data, sometimes it's called storytellers. So actually the people that can actually bring the so what behind the data and actually share it with domain experts, with business largely, and actually, to be able to drive the adoption of the data-driven insight within the large organization. And this is a very kind of, blurry role. It's very difficult to say there's a gold standard, what we are really looking for. And probably from organization or the area to area, this role will be probably defined very differently. But it's a new one that today we are also actively pursuing in this kind of broader data landscape.
Yeah, well, hopefully today we can explore some topics and strategies, to find and hire these data roles, which there's so many of actually, and it seems to continue to expand. But yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer. All right, so we've kind of covered the in-demand roles, let's say, or data roles that people are looking for in 2022. But looking at it from a more broader perspective, Tomek, maybe I'll ask this question for you. So, what are some of the biggest recruitment trends that you've seen over the last 12 months?
It's not like I see something, but we have quite a bit of data regarding that, because we are publishing a report for like what's going on in the recruitment space every year, and it's based on our like real data that we get from our platform. But anyways, looking at this data and looking at what I can tell from the markets, the data science is like not even growing; it's exploding at the moment. It's partly because of hype, partly because of the big data finally starts to catch up. So more and more organizations realize that they need to somehow crunch this data, and there's a huge demand for that, and even for junior roles. So everything, like if I were to find like a scissor knife for or Swiss Army knife for a position, I would go for like data ops or ML ops. So essentially, I would say that it's an equivalent of a full stack developer in the data space. So someone who can not only like find its way around all the machine learning models, gather data, extract data, do some cleanup. But eventually, once the whole process is done, he or she can also deploy the actual model so that it serves people. So it's not only a prototype or a proof of concept living somewhere, but also something that can be useful for other people, and also cost effective. But because that's yet another thing that we have to look at, because after all, I mean, no matter how good your data model is or your ML model or whatever, it has to like bring money rather than just be a sunken cost that you cannot justify in case of boards. So that's kind of the biggest trend I see. People who are skilled in data and pretty much like all over the place. So every single role that you mentioned in the previous poll is in the high demand, from juniors to seniors in every single area. And also, last but not least, people who can do a little bit more than just like multiplying matrices or doing advanced SQL or writing MapReduce jobs, if someone's still doing that. But they can also like really like put that into production. So they can like keep an eye on how the model looks like, and go past the training phase or go past the initial implementation, because that's how I would call the full stack data developer if there's something like that.
Yeah, sure. And Ludmilla, maybe you have something to add from kind of the recruitment perspective. Have you?
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask, like, if I may play my favorite game and be like talking as a recruiter with hiring managers. Do you actually have your priorities? Have you thought how building the team? Because when I'm talking to the hiring managers, that's what I'm trying to bring on table, that yes, we need all of those, and preferably yesterday or 2 days ago. But how are you actually building your team? What is the priorities? Who will be the starting point? Who will be the base? Swiss Army knife is perfect. So the full stackers, everybody loves the full stackers. But are you actually ready to think that maybe someone brings, like if you're talking about someone building the models, another one is training the models. So we're actually also looking for those experts in the different areas and how you can find the specific people. Also, previously, I used to work for the role which called a research engineer, which was a combination of data engineer deploying, and all of that. And what I faced at the end, when we are discussing the candidates, no one really knows what that candidate will do. They're amazing. They go through the process. They're amazing through the process. They have amazing knowledge. But then at the end, there is something that doesn't click. That's playing the recruiter. I always like to ask actually the hiring managers and engineers, data engineers, those who have technical background. Do you actually know what you're missing? Do you actually know what you're looking for? Can you put the priorities so the recruiters can focus on these different priorities and build your team, well, as a binary tree from the scratch to the duplicating?
Yeah, well, I think it's something I guess we kind of discussed in our last panel with structure and stuff like that. With building this kind of data-driven culture, it has to filter from the top down. Like obviously you're tasked with the recruitment aspect of it, but that process, is company wide. And yeah, so I think it's an interesting takeaway for sure. I'm not sure if anyone has anything to add. Otherwise, I'll jump along to our next question, which is actually for you, Ludmilla. And you mentioned something there about candidates and like what you're looking for in the candidates. So this question is sort of based on candidate profile, like, or ideal candidate profile. So do you have a method of defining the, let's say, ideal candidate profile? Is it do you engage at all with the engineering team? You mentioned something there about engaging, or is it done solely within recruitment at Avon?
Yeah, again, it's like my personal approach. I actually like to dive deep. I like to understand what they're doing, what they're working on, what their technologies, what their business model. Like when we're talking about Ivan, this platform, which sides of platform, which product we're doing, how are we doing, which people working on it, and why we are interested in those who are optimizing the queries in the Postgres, or why we're not interested in those who are working with MongoDB or something like that. So I'm trying, of course, again, I'm not a technical person, so I try not to go too deep into the details, but at least that gives me a better understanding. If we go more into the sourcing or hiring people, that gives me an idea where I can get those people, whether they're companies that working in the same area, whether these specialists or technologists or conferences they're following. Maybe when we're talking about the data analysts, whether they're coming more from the product background, are they like in production data people, or are they academia data people? What are our needs there? Can we train some things? Are those missing? So more in a way that, of course, the hiring managers are always coming to me is that like, okay, I have this list. You need to do the checkbox. We want to hire those. And then it's my role to discuss with them where actually what out of those are critical and what are out of those we can teach, or the people can pick up on the learning curve when they come. And then, as I said, like the sourcing comes also more. What is, are we able to onboard people who have been strictly in academia, who are really good at the running models and running our codes and training ML and so on? Is it something that we are looking for? Is there something that they can pick up in production, or is it so critical that we actually deploying, like we have 2-3 deployments a week? So we actually need people who are in production. So we just can't afford to have people from academia. That's also like simplifying the process, and it's simplifying the screening and the review of the hiring managers later.
Sure.
One more thing that just came to my mind. It's kind of a heuristic when you're like doing recruitment and trying to figure out what kind of person you are talking to. So I heard that like 80 or 90% of work of a data engineer, data scientist, whatever, is actually loading, extracting, filtering, and cleaning up data. So it's not the actual work that you would expect. So figuring out what is the model, reading research papers, whatever. It's just like trying to come up with an idea. Where is this data coming from? Where is this table? What is the structure? What is the schema? So if your candidate is focused only on the research part, so he or she asks like, what algorithms do you use? What kind of tools do you use? What frameworks, and so on and so forth. And there's not a single question about like, what kind of storage do you have? What kind of underlying storage do you have? Do you have a versioning or schema, or is there some data governance, making sure that you don't just store very unstructured data in your database, which makes it really, really hard to work with. If someone starts at the very end, so like building a model from already existing great clean data, it's probably not a person that can deliver like the whole product. He or she will need a support from developer or someone who can actually like figure out where to get the data from. And you don't have to be really technical to realize where are the focus points placed in during the talk.
Yeah, I think to add to that, that's also like we can make a poll of the most popular questions from the candidates as well when they're asking whether the code is monolith. So you can already see when the people got burned at some point there. And then they also ask whether there is a legacy. There you also know what the people have been through.
Magda, maybe do you have anything to add here from kind of your perspective as a hiring manager?
I mean, I think that there is a kind of angle to it. It's everything depends on the levels of maturity of how much data driven your organization is, and the less mature, or you are just kicking off building the capabilities, the stranger this cooperation between the recruitment teams and the hiring managers looks, because probably none of the parties are actually were able to define the right scope of the task of the work. There are lots of ideas, what you would like to see, and then what kind of task, data scientists should do comparing to what is the task for data engineer role and so on. And sometimes really, our initial understanding, it's not only, kind of maybe not that obvious also for the candidates, but also we have kind of struggles. We're struggling with defining the scope and then looking for the actual candidates that can fit such a role. So there is a lot of expectations put into the role that sometimes it's impossible to be handled even for the most talented individual or even couple of individuals. And that's probably the most, I believe, at the very beginning, sensitive part of this very process. If you go more into the mature side of the organization, you've got the clarity, for example, what data engineer role is. And for example, usually, because data scientists are very much savvy into this very part of working with algorithms, with models, with R&D, then you won't waste that kind of resources to prepare the data extraction or even the basic features for the modeling, because you have a specialist roles that can actually prepare the data or even do the feature engineering for the data scientists to actually pick up at that point. So you basically have a much more granular roles, and you are basically aware what you can do, and then you are also much, let's say, intelligent in terms of utilizing people's time. At the same time, you also have a better value proposition for the candidates, because you have the clarity what that role entails, and then you can match candidate also expectations and then the job description with what they can offer and what are also their own ideas for that role might be kind of matching or not. So I think it is a bit of a very sensitive and aspect of this whole, not only internal partnership, but also how you actually work with the candidates. And that's the tricky part, especially at the beginning of the journey.
It gets more tricky with the more roles that sort of get born out of businesses' needs. So I think it's going to keep going. But thanks very much for that, guys. And I mean, we've touched on it briefly in that last question. But sort of the cooperation between HR and IT, Ludmilla, do you envision kind of like an ideal process? And when it comes down to the decision, like the hiring decision, which team does that usually lie with? Is it the HR's team or the IT team, or is it a joint decision?
That's actually really good questions. I do like initiatives that if traditional HR or human resources are moving more to this neutral people team, that we are actually not just resources, we are actually people who are helping people. And I do like that it's also moving into the partnership, that we are actually specialists there on the field, that we're helping where to find the right people. We're helping to steer and stream. We're helping to steer the whole processes. When it comes to the decision, again, the different companies are different. Some have a bit more power into the engineering teams. Some have a bit more power in the people teams. I would say, as for example, Ivan right now, we're like startup officially, but we're scale up. So there are a lot of still freedom and a lot of these choices from the team that is really important actually by the engineering team and the people who are in the interview processes their opinion is valued probably the most. So if they say then that this is not the person we want to work with, like that will be valuable. But at the same time, we do have the input from the people team on the sense, on the salaries, on the experience, on the expertise. So we collaborate there in that sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like a healthy working relationship, which I think isn't always the case. Tomek, maybe you can add, like, I mean, you're like you said earlier, one of your primary responsibilities is building out the dev team at DevSkiller, but you've been at Allegro and other companies in the past with similar responsibilities. So how do you envision the ideal cooperation?
Yeah, so you know what? Like a couple of years ago, let me start from the very beginning. So a few years ago, there was this movement born called DevOps, which was a collaboration between developers and operations. And it turned out that it's very non-productive when you have developers in one room and system administrators in another room, and they just like don't talk to each other. They just exchange tickets and basically like do not collaborate building the software. So it turned out that the DevOps movement, DevOps is not really a role. It's more like a culture that you build in your organization. It turned out it's extremely useful. And why am I saying this? I think we should do the exact same thing between developers and HR or people or whatever you call it, because more often than not, I saw that developers and recruiters were like two completely separate teams, and developers had their opinion, HR had their opinion, or whatever you call them, but I will stick to HR just to emphasize that. So HR had their own opinion and they like clashed. So they were maybe discussing, maybe exchanging comments in some like applicant tracking system somewhere. It was very inhumane, and very often like developers had one opinion and the HR people had the exact opposite opinion, and there was like no simple way of getting out of this issue. So what I would suggest is that developers who are engaged in recruitment process and recruiters who are not technical but know a lot about people, how they behave, how they interact in the team, what should we expect from them. This is not easy for us developers to figure out in the first place. They should really work together. So they should form like a common teams. Maybe they should recruit together. I don't know, but like we should never get into a situation when these are essentially two groups of people who have their opinions, and then there's someone at the top, maybe a developer, maybe an HR person. I don't know. That doesn't really matter. But there's this one person at the top making the final decision. That shouldn't work this way. We should build this synergy so that we work together, we exchange our experiences, and we do not build this artificial wall, because we are different people. I mean, we are extremely different people. Not going into stereotypes, but that's definitely the case. So we should embrace that, and we should take advantage of the fact that people from HR are like extremely well skilled and equipped in skills that we don't have as developers, as technical peoples. Yes, Ludmilla, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sorry. I just like really, one of my biggest motto is sharing is caring. And we are speaking with the words through the mouth. And I think that's actually like crossing the most of the problems is cooperation and discussing exactly what you mentioned. I have seen, I was lucky always working with the teams and working close with the people who understand. Better they explain me what they're looking for, faster I will find them people. So it's like my personal recommendation is always exactly working as close as possible, working together with engineers, with the hiring managers, whether it's engineers or any other. I love the kickoff document, which a lot of people say that it's too much information, you're spending too much time. But I actually love to go through each detail that, let's say, candidate and asking me, okay, when I'm joining, which team I'm joining, what will be my career development, what other team members are doing. So actually, I'm getting every detail. Sometimes I'm even inside the team. I understand how the team cooperates, whether they distributed team, are they sitting all in the same room, how they actually work in this COVID. Is their manager located in the same country or is it somewhere else? Their details are really minor, but more details you have actually better picture. If you're hiring, let's say, for existing team engineering manager, you need the manager who knows how to work with the existing team. I wouldn't say like with challenging people, but you have a group of people who have been working together. So all these minor details can be very obvious when you're as a hiring manager, you come to the recruiter and say, or like HR teams that, okay, I need to hire 10 people. That's wonderful. Which kind of 10 people you need to hire? Which location? For which roles? What you're expecting from them? How they will work? Do you want someone to mentor them? Do you want them to mentor someone? So all these details, it's exactly about the talking, cooperation, and about understanding each other's needs. And it's also about the recruitment, where I see the problem very often coming that we are very often understretched. It's always that what we need people, we need 20 people. Well, that's wonderful. You have 5 to 10 hiring managers, and each of them need 20 people. There is only one person who's doing everything. So they're also in the way that if hiring managers really cooperate, they're helping to write in the engineering language the job description. They're actually helping with the buzzwords. They're actually helping to share the job description, that the right people coming through to the pipeline. It's not everything that, oh, you're a people specialist. Here you go. Get me people.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a joint effort. You're working towards the same goal. So the team should be working together. It just makes the most sense. And funnily enough, we're planning a HRIT cooperation series actually at DevSkiller. So look out for that in April. We'll probably have a 3-part webinar series on this exact topic, because as we can see, it's a very, very juicy one. Okay, I might move ahead to our next question. And I do see some comments and questions coming through. We will get to them. And yes, this question here about how to remove the barrier between hiring manager and recruiter. I mean, we could cover that today, but I suggest you join in on the series we're going to have specifically for that topic. But Magda, I've got this next question here for you, and we touched on this in our Secrets of Data-Driven Organizations panel 2 weeks ago about skills and competencies, and sort of how these concepts can be confused with one another. But as in your role in hiring data talent, what are the main skills and competencies that you're looking for in candidates? I know it differs for each role, but maybe as a sort of general rule.
Yeah, obviously there are different roles, different maturity of the different parts of the organization. So of course it is a vast topic in itself. But more from like high level perspective, I think there are some common denominators that we are looking for. And actually it's something that goes not very much into the technical expertise. I mean, those are must-haves, right? And it needs to be kind of, thoroughly discussed, well-scoped, and so on. And that's the part that, at the same time, it's probably easier to check and to define, and then to discuss with candidates. Because we are very much heavily relying, just coming back or building what was, to our previous discussion about this cooperation between the recruiters and hiring managers and actually the teams. We are in our data efforts, we are very much team oriented. There is not that much nowadays, which was not the truth in the past, that there are like standalone roles that people can deliver, even if they work in a remote teams and they physically are sometimes working standalone, because we're also recruiting, the professionals that are kind of location independent, and there might be some virtual teams, but there are not that much of the people that do only their job in a kind of siloed way, and then, just push, the work, to other silos that usually what you can end up with kind of, the work falling somewhere in between the cracks and not actually feeding properly what you need to deliver. But basically, our teams are organized in teams. Mm-hmm. So that also means that the ability of the candidate to work within those teams are quite crucial. And it is really not about the style or, being introvert or extrovert. This is the form of expression. This is the ways that diverse people communicate and actually perform the work, and they have some preferences to it. But it's not about that. It's actually ability to become a valid team member and to actually contribute to what we are developing as a team. And this is something that I'm not sure if you already kind of have a silver bullet in terms of how to verify that, but that aspect, it's quite important. And then, of course, if the more senior role, the more it's not only about the teamwork, the successful collaboration, but also the ability to lead the change, to become also a leader, which might not be that obvious from this specifically in a stereotyped way, IT roles, right? we discuss this thing very much about the leadership potential, even for let's say even junior candidates, in terms of the potential for them to develop further into the role. So that might be something that it's not that obvious, and this ability of this T-shaped idea, so people will have also appreciation of what's happening, in the upstream and the downstream of whatever they kind of specific role they fulfill. And last but not least, from my perspective, I think that something that was to me the most challenging sometimes in terms of recruiting candidate is actually kind of curiosity and to the domain that he or she kind of serving. Because I found out that sometimes, this data and other IT roles are so much focused on the, tech stack, technologies. I want to work with, Databricks, or I would like to work with some specific solutions. So I'm very much into this technical part. But actually, and I don't care whether this is about the pricing of the, telecommunication bundles, or about, cases of, soft drinks, that's something that let the business kind of sort it out. I'm the very expert about, on feature engineering.
Yeah.
And what we found out that without this, I am not saying about the deep business know-how, but this curiosity and openness to the domain, and have a readiness to actually deep dive into the details. We understand what is this business about, what is this domain is about, whether it's marketing, whether this is, supply chain or anything. Just become curious. It's extremely powerful for me indicator of the future success in any role we talk about, or even those that we haven't. From ML, deep learning, to data scientists, to even probably BI specialists, you name it.
Yeah. It's something that, funnily enough, in one of our discussions, I think last year, we had a DevOps panel, and curiosity was one of the big things that came up in that conversation as well. So it is interesting. Well, thanks Magda, very much. We're kind of moving along pretty nicely here. We're at the stage of our second poll of 3. We've kind of already looked over the process and the cooperation, the job roles. Now we're kind of moving into this topic of sourcing, which obviously is quite a big one. So I'm going to launch our next poll here. Again, panelists, you're more than welcome to vote on this one. And the question is, where have you had the most success sourcing data professionals? Again, this is multiple choice, so you can pick many. And the options are universities, hackathons, LinkedIn, GitHub, Stack Overflow, job boards, or something else that might not be there. And if it is there and you have your own little secret talent pool that you'd like to share, you can leave that in the comments for us. Sure, everyone would be intrigued to see that one. And I can see there's a bit of a resounding winner at the moment, but the votes are still coming through. So let's give it a couple of seconds. Okay, I think I can end it. And I'll share the results. So yes, as I said, LinkedIn with the resounding win, but we did get votes again for everything. Second place was job boards. And again, votes for others. So if you guys have got anything you'd like to share there, please do let us know. But I will ask this next question actually for Ludmilla, and Magda, you can add as well if you've got any points here. But having looked at the poll, and we can see that where people in our audience are sourcing people from. Do you have any of your own sourcing practices or secret tips that you've had success with over your career?
Well, I know you have been talking to Amazing Hiring. I have seen one of the videos with them. I can get the credit for them. I have been using Amazing Hiring as well. I actually had a really great chance to work with a really strong sourcing team once back in days when I joined Zalando. We had really nice specialists. And what I learned is a diversity in sourcing that gives you best results. So like looking only in LinkedIn, well, you can go as we all talking about data, you screen 1,000 CVs, you will see more candidates probably. But for me, it's about the diversity in the sense that you're just looking for the upstreams in the sense you see people more in the open source. There you can find the contributors. You see more about these people who are more in the research. Then you look for the papers. You look for the magazines, which are in the data scientist area. You're looking more for the SaaS platforms, business analytics companies. You're picking up people from there. You need people who have the metrics and billings. Then you go for the fintech. So it really varies in the sense like you're looking for what kind of expertise you're looking for, and then you make your web or I worked with ontology people, so you're creating your own actually ontology search in the sense what can be fitting or what is not exactly fitting but something nearby that can fit into your role. Mm-hmm. So I don't have, unfortunately, this one size fits all suggestion.
Yeah, it's definitely like you said, you need to be varied in your approach. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket. I don't think anyone would have any success with that.
But I'm a huge fan of the communities. That's definitely the communities is always, whether it's GitHub, Stack Overflow, professional communities. That's and first place to go.
I mean, do you ever experience any what's the way to say this, disgruntledness from people in those communities, because sometimes people aren't very happy being approached by recruiters there. But
then again, I use Telegram a lot, and in the sense that I'm just joining DevRel's community. I join the community. I see their trends. I see their discussions. I see them being upset with recruiters. But at the same time, I see when someone says I hate it here, but I'm actually looking for a job. I'm like, hi, you're looking for a job.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's really awesome. And Magda, we talked about in hackathons and universities last week with Tomek Shinsky. I'm not sure. Do you have any of your own sort of secrets with sourcing here?
I'm kind of fully with Ludmilla in terms of the approach. I think this diverse and different sourcing strategies, different communities especially, makes sense. I would also say that for us, it's communities. It's like a place, but how you also kind of utilize to the best the communities is also to kind of align with the opinion leaders or the experts in those communities that they actually actively can, especially for the specialist role, because if you recruit 100, hundreds of people, that will be difficult. This personal approach, right? But then when you are thinking about the specific roles, kind of aligning and to get a personal referral through the guys that are also kind of well versed in those communities, or they also have the expertise, and that it really works absolutely great. For us, also this element of referral, it also goes into the ecosystem of partners. There is also from this technically specific jobs when there's it relates directly to some specific stack or the role. It's just reaching out to our ecosystem of partners. It really sometimes makes wonders, especially if you have a very kind of narrow or specific role that we are looking for. And then again, I'm very much with what on the last panel, so Tomek shared about the hackathons. I mean, it is a bit of an effort from the organization to organize it, but you can again align it. You don't need to do it yourself. You can align with partners. It's the burden of the organization organizing such a event kind of spreads out, but the benefits probably are actually multiplying. But I'm very much into those kind of setups, but of course not for every role and not for every occasion, basically.
Yeah.
But
may I also add for what you mentioned, Magda, for the referrals? I'm like also advocating that this is also, we are as recruiters, we don't know very often these details. So if there are recruiters who are looking now, they're watching us, please do cooperate with your hiring managers and your engineering team. They're your best sources. And that's the same about the communities. I'm very soft approach recruiter. I never come in and start to jump on people saying we have a role open. I would rather talk to that DevRel and have a discussion, or the data engineer, and then ask this data engineer if they know the perfect person for the role. So I'm kind of like I'm training the messenger instead of being myself the messenger. And that's like, I see one of the questions was how to break the barrier. And that's exactly when we actually ask for help instead of pretending that we are, as recruiters, know what we're doing. That also helps this cooperation.
Yeah.
If I may give you a hint from a developer perspective, indeed, I do get, and we developers do get a ton of emails from recruiters, and most of the time they are upsettingly annoying, and we just like ignore them or like gently like say thank you. However, from time to time, I receive an email that says something along the lines of, one of my developers mentioned that you are great, and he or she loved your articles, your blog, your work on GitHub, whatever. And obviously the recruiter like is not technically skilled, so she doesn't like understand how good the article is. But just the fact that there's someone inside the organization, or like many people who pointed to this particular person, who pointed to me directly saying, hey, we know your work, we think it's valuable, we believe that you maybe should join our team. Well, that's awesome, because I am going to some, like, it's not a foreign ground anymore. It's like a team that like thinks the same way as I do. And even if I'm not interested in this particular position, I will get into the discussion and try to figure out how come these developers know me. Like maybe I can help in some other way. Maybe I can work part-time, consultancy, whatever. I'm immediately excited, rather than just boring, like we are hiring for this and this and that, and here is a list of 50 keywords that you need to know before you apply for a job. Because that's just, I'm skipping immediately.
And no one likes to get a completely automated response, be it a developer or any.
So once again, developers collaborating with recruiters in like on this level.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thanks very much, guys. So yeah, we've moving along kind of the hiring process. We're at this stage now where we've sourced our talent and we need to vet their skills. So Ludmilla, do you have any tips or how do you go about testing the skills and competencies of your candidates?
Well, actually, again, I'm very close to engineering team, and I can hear the engineers complaining about being tested on something that they're not going to be using at work. When I joined Ivan, I was against the way we are testing people, but I actually heard the feedback of the home assignment that we have, that our candidates are actually using the Ivan platform. They're actually using the works that they will be doing once they're joining the team. So I do like that approach when you showing your skills, or you are programming, or you're actually testing. And as a candidate, it is fair, because then you know what you will be doing when you're coming. There are different ways of approaching the testing, and I know there are different ways also in the recruitment, whether you need to limit amount of the candidates applying for you. So there is one way to doing it. You need to have some other. It's the same as recruitment. It really depends what you're looking for. It's the same that I'm asking anyone who's going through the recruitment process, that you need to understand what you're trying to get out. It's the same as you're writing your master thesis, or the same as you're writing the paper or doing any analytical job. What is your outcome? And then it's again from backward to the beginning. Depends on your outcome, what you're looking for. You can put the steps on which testing platform you're using, or how you're testing your engineers, or whether you're not testing them.
Yeah. And it's, like you said, it can be a process of filtering down or trying to look for a particular skill. But it's interesting that you mentioned this point about testing what they're doing on the job, because at DevSkiller, we have something called the real life testing methodology. I think, Tomek, you might be able to share a few words. Like, what do you think about that process of testing and verifying skills of candidates?
Yeah, so not going into our platform, because I don't want to make it a sales pitch. But anyway, so I just watched this tweet recently that was saying, let me quote it, tech might be the only place where the interview is harder than the actual job. And that's kind of how it looks. But it might not even be harder. We are just testing for different skills, and that's weird. And we are testing it in an insanely different environment. These infamous like whiteboard coding, where you just go through writing code using on chalkboard or whatever, which is like wildly different from what we normally do. So if I'm a developer, I sit down, I do some coding, I use version control systems, I have like a ton of tools that support me. I do use Google a lot. I mean, seriously, I'm searching the internet like hundreds of times per hour. And if you are putting your candidate in front of a whiteboard or even in front of a computer with no internet access, this is just like testing for a doctor with their like eyes shut down or something like that. This is like wildly different.
And basically something like that.
Yes. So that's why we and every other company should strive for testing the environment that's really, really close to what you actually do at work. So similar code base, similar tools, similar environment, similar tasks. And if you're a data engineer, but like, as I mentioned quite some time ago, 80% of your work is extracting data and cleaning up the data. But the only thing you are testing during the recruitment is making sure that someone like knows every possible equation in the machine learning space. This is not representative, because you're then looking for a scientist, but not a data scientist, and not someone who can actually deliver software. So put that person in front of, I don't know, Jupyter Notebook or RStudio or whatever you use in your company for data engineering, or SQL editor. Give them a bunch of tables and say, like, just try to figure out where's the data and come up with something interesting from that data. That is awesome, because that allows people to explore and also to understand the domain, rather than just this really dry and boring and, to be honest, quite hard programming assignments that are like very far away from what you actually do at work. And this is what we are striving, and this is what we are aiming at in our platform, to provide like very real life programming assignments, rather than just like things that you would never come across at your daily work.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, thanks very much, guys, for those responses. We've actually got 2 questions left, and our final poll. So I'm just going to launch this poll. We've, I think, covered quite comprehensively the hiring process from start to finish. Organizationally, cooperation, sourcing, screening, and now we've got to the point where we've hiring talent, but the next challenge that comes along with that is retention. So this is a single choice poll, and I think I've allowed the panelists to vote for this one as well. And the question is, what is the single biggest factor that influences whether a new hire stays in their role? And the options are salary, growth opportunities, job security, company culture, work-life balance, or something else, something other. So, and I know that there might be multiple responses for this one, but we were trying to pinpoint it down. And yeah, we open up our next question based on this poll. And I can still see a few votes coming through. Yep. All right. I might end the poll. One more. Okay, I think we might have a tie. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So we do have a tie between salary and company culture. However, we got votes also for growth opportunities, work-life balance, and other. Again, I mean, yes, we can't sort of have a 15 long response for these polls, so we're trying to limit it to a few options. I'm going to stop sharing that one. And I'll ask this next question to you, Magda. So you've probably hired dozens of people over your career. I'm sure some have stayed with you long term, some have stayed with you for much shorter. So over your career, have you had any sort of retention strategies that have worked? Like, what have you seen in your experience?
Well, kind of aligned with, especially around the growth opportunities and culture. I do believe that, in the end, people sometimes join the brand, but then kind of try to unsubscribe from the people they work with and from the actual, the environment they're trying to either, develop themselves and realize their potential, or actually, hate every day they spend working. And so I believe, in the end, it is about the company culture, but also linked, especially in this quite modern data-related roles. People just want to develop. They want to do, develop themselves, but also to deliver something meaningful. Sometimes at a larger scale, sometimes more related to their tech competency, but they want to have this feeling that they really drive some new things, that they're able to really create something, not being very repetitive. Even in those roles, that there are bits and pieces that might be not that fulfilling, but it's kind of must. But at the same time, really just it's interesting, fulfilling work, creative, with a steep learning curve. That's probably the areas with a good leader, nice collaboration culture. That's something that creates the stickiness. Mm-hmm. And if you just give this, and one probably factor to it, it's just like, to me, it's all about, under promise and over deliver. I think it's also very important message to all this kind of hiring managers, or also recruiters, depending who convey the messages about this role and how that would, what's great about it. It's really, you need to kind of really then deliver on promise. If you don't, whatever you will structure, it will be like, it's actually for nothing. So that's probably the summary of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you can see a bit of a trend, I guess, in your hiring strategy with these curious people that are also hungry for growth. So you can kind of see the connection between that for sure in your response there. Tomek, and thanks very much, Magda, for the response. Tomek, do you have anything to add on this point?
Yeah, so salary, I don't think is enough, because there's such a high demand for developers that they will always find a place with a higher salary. Like, that's for sure on any given position. Yeah. I missed a domain. So many people are staying in a company because they love what the company is actually doing. So we are curing the cancer type of thing. But one more thing that can definitely keep people at a company is an opportunity to grow, but I would say even more general, to choose their career or choose their path or change their career or whatever. We had some great success with, we called it team tourism, where people could actually go to a different team for 2 weeks or a month to do something different. A backend developer going to front-end people, or a data engineer going to backend people or infrastructure people, just to see, maybe that's something I would love. I get this opportunity. So the organization should build kind of the culture of, and I guess that's the culture part. The organization should kind of build the culture where developers are free to migrate between the teams to a certain extent, or the company should provide, tools or processes where different people on different roles can kind of figure out what is the next logical step. So, okay, I'm done with doing React.js. Now I want to do backend development with Python. And I think I have the right skills. or maybe it's the job of the manager to like figure out like this person is going to burn out really, really quickly. So maybe I can assign her to some different role, different area, different domain, whatever. And because after all, it's much easier to move someone to a different team, so to hire internally rather than find someone external in the market, even if the person is like slightly overpaid because like she's starting from like a different position where maybe she or he is a junior, but it's already in the same organization. So the person already knows the culture, knows the domain, and so on and so forth. So it's the role of the organization and of the culture, and maybe HR, maybe managers, management, whatever, to build that kind of process and build that kind of trust and capabilities of the company that at any point in time, to a certain extent, you can move to a different place in the company because it's much better than just like flying to a different company, and it's much less costly for the organization.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we've run out of time, I think, guys. It was a really, really interesting discussion today. And I didn't see any more questions in the Q&A. However, if any of you in the audience do have questions for us, you can always send them in. We'll get back to them by email. But yeah, I don't want to take up any more of anyone's time. So I'd just like to say a really big thank you to Ludmilla, Magda, and Tomek for joining in. I thought it was a really, really interesting conversation. As I mentioned at the start, there will be a feedback form coming through basically right after this finishes. So you can take the time to fill that. That would be great. And we'll be sending you the recording link probably on Friday mornings, so you can share that one with your colleagues or rewatch it for yourself if you'd like. Yeah, keep an eye out for our next series, which will be starting in about 4 weeks, which is this HRIT Cooperation series. Maybe we'll see Ludmilla or Tomek or Magda back on one of those ones. So thank you very much, guys. And yeah, speak to you all soon. See you later, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.